Good evening, everybody.
Hey man, how you doing?
I'm good.
Let's go.
Nice one. Twiddlers number 60. Man, I can't believe it. It's 60 already. I've been here for 60 weeks, uninterrupted, talking to like-minded people and friends and colleagues and stuff. So yeah, feel very blessed to be there. And today we have three guests again. First of all, I'll just go from left to right, top to bottom. Casimir, KRTM. Welcome to Twiddlers, man. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good. A little bit stressed, but good.
Yeah. Stressed, but good.
Yeah, it's just traveling is starting again, and yeah, some stuff to do again that is different than working on music exclusively on yourself.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny how you I guess that how we all got used to staying in one place and forgot about the hectic stuff that happens when you have to travel.
Yeah.
I suppose as well, it's like it's almost more stressful when you can't go anywhere to.
Yeah. Where you off to, Casimir?
To Berlin. And that's streaming first, and then the weeks after will be Holland and then Hungary. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Nice. That's a nice schedule coming up for you. Could be worse.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Also joining us from Dublin is Sunil Sharpe. What's up?
Hey, welcome. Yeah, all good, man. Thanks. Good to be with all of you this evening. Yeah, I mean it's good. I'm kind of easing into it. I know like the scene is starting back up again, but for me, it's sort of been the end of a lot of the kind of a long run. I've been teaching over the last 7 to 8 months. I teach from like September to May or early June. So we've been just winding down from that. There's some other stuff happening over here, like a nightlife campaign and stuff like that. So I've been quite consumed by that. But usually when I get to summer is when I've kind of accepted at this point that this is really the only time of the year I really get to spend some time on making music. So actually this chat and just this little coming together tonight, it's kind of a good time for me because I'm just sort of getting back in that mindset a little bit. So yeah, good to be here.
Nice one. Learning to be social again.
yeah, something like that.
So what were you teaching then?
I've been teaching a DJ course, which kind of turned into a DJ. It's DJ and music production. It also kind of includes events. It's sort of like an all-round. I don't want to call it a crash course, but it's like a 1-year course out in a college here called Bray Institute of Further Education. So I've been doing that since like 2005. So it's very much I do feel it's kind of like one of my vocations. I suppose it's when you start something. It's not until you start something that you actually kind of know it's for you. But it's something that I take a pride in, and I don't know. I just like what we're doing out there, and I enjoy it. And there has been times, especially in recent years, as DJing has started to kick off more, that maybe I didn't need to be keeping on that job. A part-time job. It would definitely make during the week a little bit easier sometimes, but I don't know. I think the college have been quite flexible with me as well, and I enjoy being there, and I plan to be there for into the future as well. But it's developing. We were challenged this year, having to do all the classes almost online, and I do feel for a lot of the students. But I think what's coming after this, and maybe like what you're doing with these shows, it's like, how can we bring new things? Like, there's kind of new things we've had to do. We've been forced to do them, but now we kind of have new options, So we're slowly transforming even some of the studios, and I think it could be interesting where we go from here, So it was a bit of a weird year, but I think we're going into a good place after this. So let's see.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Let me first introduce Andrew, and then you can talk the rest of the show, okay?
Yeah, sorry.
No, I'm just joking. Andrew, welcome. Slave to Society, also joining us from Belfast.
Belfast at the minute, yes. Thanks for having us on.
How's it going?
Not too bad, man. I've just been busy writing loads of music at the minute and trying to get things sort of organised for the rest of the year.
It's been ages, man.
It's been a long time since the last time I seen you, man. I think the last time I seen you actually was whenever we did the back-to-back in Paris.
Oh, yeah, of course.
In the warehouse, I think that was the last time.
Just before the world went to shit.
Yeah, exactly. Just before. I remember I seen Casimir at Unpolished, and it was like, yeah, we'll see you in a few weeks or something, because there was a gig coming up, and then it was like, everything stopped 3 or 4 days later, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, looking forward to getting back onto it again and starting to travel and play again.
Yeah. The last time Paris was the last time we saw each other on the road, and then before that you and Dimi were here at Stoor. You were one of the first guests, so that was fun too. I remember you guys came in and said, let's get the 909 off the shelf. and I remember the first 2 hours, I was just standing there, you know, watching you two guys just going absolutely bonkers crazy on the 909 and the 808 with these pedals you brought over. What were they again? Like the WMDs or something?
It was this one.
Oh, you got it there, of course.
One of my favorites.
Yeah,
it's the
distortion.
WMD Acoustic Trauma. It's one of my favorite distortions. Like it's like a 3-band sort of distortion unit, but it's pretty tasty. But yeah, I remember that day because I remember like the first thing I used in your studio was like a Synthy and an 808, and it was sort of like 2 machines that I would never have been able to touch before. It was like, sweet.
Yeah, and you kind of pushed both to the edge immediately. Like, how noisy can I get those machines?
I think to be honest, I think you were a bit concerned about your speakers the first 2 hours that me and Dimitri got.
Yeah, I mean the drum machines are fine, but some of the synths, especially that one, can produce insane frequencies, and listening levels were pretty high as well then, I think. And
I think that's
never know,
normal, right?
Yeah, and if you don't know exactly what you're doing on it, which is fine, you know, the machine, you know, the sound sonically it's fine, but in terms of peaks for the speaker system, it can be dangerous. So anyway,
exactly.
Nobody was hurt, no speakers were hurt or anything, so all good.
No damage was done.
No damage was done. Yeah.
I think it was funny that day as well, because I think we had our first like 3 hours of having a jam, and we all thought it was a bit rubbish, and then it ended up actually they were some of the bits that we liked the most out of everything we did, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing that I've learned, especially since I've been here. You know, like just make sure the recording button is always on, because you never know. And some of the things that have ended up on the vinyls were actually recorded during times when, you know, the guests and myself were actually not in a mindset of producing anything, but just, you know, fooling around and just trying things out and, you know, sound checking basically. And sometimes it's good, you know, not to think too hard about things and just let it happen. And that was one of those things as well with you guys.
Yeah, I think that's something we all find hard to actually realize sometimes. It's just when you're trying to be creative, generally you'll be most creative whenever you're not trying.
Yeah.
But if you do try, you just can't do anything. You just get frustrated instead.
I mean, yeah, it's actually a good strategy to not you know, to start something without having the idea that you're actually going to produce something, like that you have to finish something, you know. So just playing around is the moment where the juices start flowing, basically.
Yeah, it's sort of something I've been taking on myself a bit recently. Like I used to always like make the sound when I was making the track, whereas recently I've been having sort of sound design days where I just sit and record and make sound for the fun of it, and then afterwards resample it to actually make a track, you know. Whereas before I always would have made the sound and the track at the same time, you know. Yeah,
I see Casimir nodding. Is that true for you as well? Do you separate the fun studio times and the actual production times into separate time frames to just experiment?
Really depending. But usually I like to do a lot of sound design and then start seeing where things come together, or sometimes just like have a really long session of just hi-hats, and then a very long session like modded drums, and then even unrelated, just bring them together and see if something starts to happen, and and that's actually really cool. And you can focus on the sound design while doing that, and not on composition. And then composition is more fun sometimes like that, because you already did the whole processing. It's one way of doing something like that.
Yeah, sort of. That's like preparing your stuff mise en place.
Yeah.
Does that take more patience? Because for me that would be, and I'd say for some producers it's kind of a patience thing. You start something, so you want to kind of get at it and get it finished and get the idea down. I mean, I remember years ago, Jochen, I remember there was a quote of yours. It was in something like Future Music where you said, if the idea doesn't come together in 20 minutes, it's not worth keeping or something. Do you remember that? This was like a good while back, maybe like 15 years ago, 20 years ago or something.
I don't remember the actual quote, but it might have been something I said, yes. Because I'm quite impatient, you know. I'm like, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, you know, scrap it, bin it, just go on to the next idea, basically.
See, I'd be like, with me, I kind of like, while I feel inspired to make music, I'd be kind of like, right, let's make the most of this time while it's there, because it comes and goes. And I mean, something I've been chatting to a few people about probably over the last year is how many, and I don't know if this is an age thing as well, but there's a lot of producers, especially older ones, who have made very little in the last year, you know, and it's sort of like when the clubs come back, they'll be inspired by that again. Do you know what I mean? And
I've heard those things too. Yeah.
And I don't know if it happened to me a little bit in recent years as well, that when my inspiration kind of could come and go, you know, and depending how many things I had on, I wasn't nearly organized to have like a sound design day or, you know, that kind of stuff. But I would like to approach it a little bit more like that, because I do think, you know, the more you have kind of maybe set aside and a little bit more of a structure or a plan for it, that rather than just rushing to make a tune really quickly, can be a good way to do it as well. So, but I have found it interesting. It's just something I thought about, is maybe younger producers sometimes are always inspired to make music because they're still sort of getting out that initial stage of creativity and listening to techno, whereas maybe some people who've been at it for a while might need the clubs a little bit more to get the kind of the juices flowing again or something like that. I don't know if there's something in that, but it just seemed that people I've spoken to that said that have been kind of older producers, whereas some of the younger producers have been staying more productive. I may be generalizing, but it was just something I kind of picked up on over the last while.
I think with nobody really going to clubs as well, man, I think it's sort of like, maybe you do have days where you're in a techno mood, or if you're in a mood to make dance floor stuff. But a lot of people I've spoke to as well, they're sort of like, they're almost like I don't know, like exploring different realms of themselves when it comes to music, because they know that they don't have the freedom to like make a track and go and play it that weekend in the club or whatever, you know. And also, you know, sometimes whenever you're constantly on the road, you always have this thing where, whether you like it or not, you're going to hear what's playing before you and after you and all night long. So
whether you like it or not,
whether you like it or not, sometimes, you know, you get really surprised and you love what you hear. And other times you're stood there thinking like, oh fuck, I can't wait until this is over or whatever.
But is the whole club experience like vital to your process then? I mean, for me, it doesn't make a difference whether I play or not. You know, I basically, when I'm in the studio, I'm just working from my own mind. I might have picked up things, you know, like general things, but I don't need to be on a busy clubbing schedule or playing schedule to be able to produce something.
No, I think to be honest, I think you make better music whenever you haven't been in clubs for a long time, because your ears are better. Your ears aren't tired either as well, and also you've got extra energy that you wouldn't have had if you were on the road all the time too. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm.
I used to find though what probably kind of drove me more back into the box and just doing stuff with a laptop was that I found having to go up to the studio, let's say on a Monday, and in my last studio, for instance, I could only use it after 6 o'clock in the evening because there was, you know, offices next door and stuff like that. So inevitably, I sort of fell out of the habit, and then sometimes I wouldn't get in there on a Monday evening. So I found what worked for me better was that when I come back on a Sunday night, I just have a laptop and I just sort of literally just sketch things, kind of like I'm kind of almost in that sort of vegetated kind of state where I'm getting something together, and that means so much sometimes, because you can go for weeks and months without doing anything. But if you can I just found that those Sunday nights were really useful to me, because once I had something in the bag, it gave me a reason to get back into on the Monday or Tuesday. So that was one of the things that worked for me with the kind of challenge of gigging and stuff in recent years anyway. But yeah.
Do you not find though that consistency is probably the best way to make good music? Because sometimes if you don't constantly try, then you know that whenever you go back, you're going to have those few days or a few weeks where you're just sort of banging your head against the wall trying to find something again. You know? Yeah,
I think the biggest one for me is not having a studio at home, you know, and it was great having studios, but I would have really, I mean, remember your one in Berlin, the last one I was in anyway, Andrew, it wasn't too far from you. It was kind of, you walked to it, didn't you? So it didn't really, you know, but I don't know, sometimes, I mean, my last one was kind of within walking distance, but I found that, you know, I think I've now settled on the idea that, you know, I do need to have a studio at home, a setup that I'm kind of happy with, that's in the room, that's everything. But things have been a bit, I don't know. I've been kind of, sometimes you can have a studio setup that works, and then when you have to move to another place or move back home temporarily, and that, I don't know. I think it's I've come to the realization that having one at home is the best thing, because then you can just switch everything on and you're ready to go.
Yeah, we were actually discussing that in the pre-chat, you know, having studios at home versus in some other place. And both Andrew and Casimir are at home as well right now.
At the minute at home, yeah.
Yeah. Does it make a difference for you not having to travel, Casimir?
Yeah, definitely. I think the album that I wrote last year, which came out just recently, I wouldn't have written that at all, like in touring days, I think, because it was just something really came from isolation rather than being by yourself for a long time, and also the amount of drums that I could come up with consistently was not something I would do like during the week between weekends. Yeah,
actually, congratulations on that album, man. It's amazing.
It's really good one.
Yeah, it actually, now you say it does sound like a piece of work where a lot of time was spent on a lot of details and variations and stuff. So it doesn't sound like something thrown together or something that is made in one session. You know, it sounds like a collage of many things going on.
It sounds like that, though. It was written really fast, and like I would say the baseline, the baseline of the work was like 2 weeks. But I would say the sound itself was like from sometimes 4 years back. I would take like a snare hit or something, put it in a drum machine while I was making the album, and then record that as well. So there's always like layers of stuff from in the past and that come back into the music, but that writing was really fast.
So it's interesting what you say, because it is sort of like you have all these pieces you work on over long periods of time, and you kind of archive them or save them for later use, and then when the time comes you want to compose something, you basically get like big chunks of audio that you've already produced and recorded, and sort of Lego them together. It's a smart idea, because
like and I think also your sound grows as it ages, or how to say, like I'm not that old, but I've done some years, and every year you come back to maybe a kick drum or something, and you can like maybe like a different timbre in there, or something that like alters it a little bit, but then it makes it better at that point, and it's still your initial process from years ago maybe. And I like that connection with your own sound and samples, and then put it in a drum machine, layer it with an analog one, or whatever. It's, there's so many things that you can do from your own library.
Yeah, that's sort of what I meant earlier when I was saying about sound design days. It's like building up your own catalogue of kick drums or snares or specific like bass sounds or whatever, because you might use that same sound like 3, 4, 10 times or whatever, but it'll never sound the same depending on the way that you resample it, or maybe the chain of effects that you actually run it through, you know.
Yeah, I've done that too. You know, they just become part of your arsenal. You know, you just build this catalog or this library, and you can draw from it for years and years in the future.
Because you always know if the kick drum's going to slam and it's going to sound good on a sound system or in the house or on any system, then you know that you can just take it, put it in a track, and the track's going to have a nice foundation to start with. You know, you're not trying to like sit and trying to work something out before you can actually get moving again.
Okay, so what is interesting is actually, this Sander, thanks for bringing this up. I was actually looking at this one. How do you stay motivated to arrange, refine, and finish tracks? So hardware jamming is quick, and then staying motivated to arrange it and bring it to a final thing is super hard for 5/7 techno. What do you think? I mean, one answer is like what Casimir was just saying, I guess. So you basically use the jams in the sound design sessions for, you know, to keep around, and then you basically slam everything together very quickly. That's an option.
I think it's really important to keep the momentum of like your initial creation burst, and that you don't lose that spark. Otherwise, you end up like writing on a track for months on end, and then it becomes this thing that you have to do. And well, if you do it really quickly, it's almost like it's writing itself. And,
it's that momentum, isn't it? That to just keep it up, to keep it fresh. I found that as well. That if I've got something that I think is good that I've got laid down, I'll leave. I don't want to come back to it until I'll try and do it quickly, but I don't want to come back to it until I'm ready to attack it. Otherwise, it's just gonna become too familiar, and then it's kind of not going to reach that next level that it needs to. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good one too. That's that's a strategy. You know, just leave it. Don't do anything until you really feel you can make a big change. You know, or you can make a contribution. Otherwise, if you listen to things that you are uninspired by too much, you know, it's going to be even more uninspiring by the time you've listened to it again and again, you know. Yeah,
you just get super bored of it and end up thinking that it's rubbish when actually it's probably not. It's probably a really good idea, but you just didn't go about it in the right way, you know.
Yeah, so just leave it, start something new, and come back to it later, I guess. Keep the motivation, there was a podcast with D-Bridge I'd listened to recently, and he was saying about sometimes whenever you write a track and it happens within 2 hours, you wonder to yourself, you know, why have I written this track in 2 hours, and why has it worked so easily? Does that mean that it's good or it's bad or whatever? But the way he was putting it was that sometimes you write a track in 2 hours or 4 hours because all the dedicated hours of practice that you've done for maybe years beyond that, it's just, you have those moments where just everything clicks, and it's just very simple, and it's like you just walk in that straight line, and it's finished, and it's very
like it, you know?
That's very true, and that kind of connects to what we were talking about earlier. You know, like what you said, Andrew. Like if you can go to the studio, and if you don't really feel inspired, you just work on sound banks or whatever. So, or you know, on whatever, you know, just learning a new piece of gear or something like that. Because I always think that never. Or no time that you are in the studio is wasted time. You know, there's always something you pick up, and something you learn or create or accumulate, or you know, so that can be useful down the line. It's like a practice thing, or like a you know, even though the actual product is not appearing, you know, your mind is sort of gathered more information and more insight and stuff like that. So it's. Yeah, even if you don't feel inspired, just go to the studio and fuck around.
Exactly.
Yeah. And not putting stress on it as well, like because that affects everything that you do. If you put like, I want to get like this exact sound, then it's like you're forcing it to be something that it could be something different. Sometimes better things come along the way.
I think you're right, man. I think whenever you try to like make that specific sound, you'd never make it anyway. You always end up making something completely different.
Replicating is the most difficult thing ever, you know?
Yeah. It's like, how did I make that sound? I can't remember, but I'll just I'll just set a whole load of stuff up and see if I can get back there at some point.
Yeah.
It's also not useful to replicate. I think it's better to maybe focus on something that you want, or like some kind of a, I don't know, like type of thing, but not like something that exact. If you can describe the texture, if you can describe like the frequency, that's already too much information. Or like sometimes you end up with a completely different instrument in the end. Like if you sound designing, which is really okay, I think.
Thanks for addressing the question. Of course, man. 5/7 techno. Yeah, I mean, replicating things could only be interesting as an exercise. You know.
Yeah,
That's probably the only reason why you would ever want to replicate something, just as an exercise to learn something.
Yeah,
is this replicating others or replicating something you've done already yourself?
Could be both, really, right? I mean, sometimes you make a sound and then maybe 2 months later you hear a track that you've made and you forget that you've done it, and then you're like, fuck, how did I do that? That actually sounds good, you know? So like you want to try and do it again. And then there's other times, I don't know about yous, but I hear tracks that I really love and then I'll be like, wow, that's pretty cool, actually. So you don't try to like make that sound to sound exactly like it, but you're definitely influenced, or maybe it like gives you like the drive to get into the studio to try to actually make something like along those lines, you know?
Do you think modular has actually changed techno to some extent, in that there's maybe, I don't want to say less copycats, but like less, because maybe certain stuff maybe can't be replicated as easy sometimes, that perhaps like in the past there used to be, let's say in techno there was 5 or 10 producers, and or even less, and everyone used to copy them and everyone kind of knew what gear they were using and stuff like that. Do you think, like, obviously there'll be a lot of people out there like the Jeff Mills sound, and people will always want to sound a little bit like that, but do you think in more recent years there's something around yeah, like, because one thing you're saying there, Andrew, a lot is like, how will I do that sound again? I don't really know. And that's because you've got a totally different type of setup now to maybe the kinds of setups that a lot of techno producers were using 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. Is that part of what you mean about not being able to find it as easy to replicate? And is that kind of healthy as well?
I think with modular stuff, it is pretty hard to replicate stuff because sometimes it just doesn't do what you want it to do, and other times it does. So it's like, I think as well.
The room where you're making it that also changes. You can have exactly the same setup in a different room and be like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, you don't really understand. That's why it's good to have good kick drums in your sample folder, because it means that if your room's bad, it'll still sound sweet.
Yeah. I think probably what modular or like affordable synths in general have been doing is encourage people to explore a bit more. Yeah. I think in the times when things were more sample based or preset kind of synth based, it was more about the composition and more about the sort of musical content, and or maybe that's not the right word, but you know what I mean, right? It's I think this delving into the whole sort of sound design and exploratory mood or mindset with modular is definitely something that is that is true for the sort of the modern gear,
Yeah. I think with companies like Behringer as well, they've like re-released nearly every classic synth for about €300 for each unit. It's pretty crazy. So it's like it becomes like, I think hardware is almost becoming more like what it was like 10 years ago, just to work on the laptop, because it's actually becoming affordable again, because some of the companies have realized that people don't have thousands and thousands to spend on their equipment. But maybe they'll spend 300 or 400 on a small synth or a small drum machine and utilize it until they can buy a new one again,
Yeah. But there's also a lot of stuff that you can find on like second-hand markets. So like stuff that it doesn't belong to like the techno scene or like whatever, not even for music. Like if it has like an auxiliary and an output or a preamp in it, and you can like, or it has a microphone input, or it has some input, then you can use it for music actually, and I find that very interesting as well, and very cheap often.
Yeah, very true. Can you mention some of the bits you discovered to use
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah,
We want
I think
gear.
yeah, like 7 years ago, I found this radio, which I still use a lot. It's called Captain 55, and I looked on the back, and it had like an auxiliary input, a headphone output, and a normal output. And I bought it, and it's like it's really a go-to distortion, but really really cranky.
Oh wow! So
Really
so you
good.
basically just use the circuit to drive stuff into it
Yeah.
and distort it. Nice.
Yeah,
It's a good find.
It's I actually have it here.
Show us.
Yeah, yeah. Stick your mic into it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it has this massive antenna as well.
Nice. Can you talk to aliens?
Nice. Nice, man.
Yeah, a really cool thing, and really old school. Yeah.
How much did you pay for that one?
30-40 euros.
Nice.
Something like that. Yeah, and it's really sturdy. Probably was far more expensive back in the day.
Looks like you could do some damage with it.
Yeah. And it has an EQ as well. Like you can very basic, just like highs and lows, and this is like the gain stage.
Nice.
It's great.
Crossfader gain and everything.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you get a lot of people asking, what should I get to start building my studio, and I always encourage people to look for the type of stuff that you just showed, like get a bag full of, crappy gear that you can run stuff through and sort of modify the sound with, even though it only does one thing, it definitely gives you an option and it enables you to give any sound your character basically. So it's a good one.
I think, to be honest, probably whenever I had a lot less gear, I probably actually was a lot more inventive with what I did with it because I didn't have the options. And sometimes when you have too much gear, you actually just get blinded by it because you're too busy trying to think, I need to use this, this, and this, rather than just going, actually, you know what, I'm going to use 3 things today and nothing else. And just write music,
That's something that always comes up, in these talks, people trying to find ways to limit themselves. Because like you said, if you're in a room full of gear, you can just go there and sort of sit there and scratch your head, But if you limit yourself and saying, okay, today I'm just going to use this, this, and this, and just bad luck if I can't get anything out of it, but it makes you try at least, Yeah. And usually you do get something out of it, which you would never get with just trying to. Grab the first available preset synth or whatever.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Going back to what Sunil was saying before as well. Like there was the Mover did an interview on Red Bull or something, and he was talking about how in the 90s everybody sounded different, but yet they all used a 909 for the drums, whereas today there's like a million sample packs and a million different ways to get a kick drum, and everybody sounds the same.
I remember Mixmaster.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, Mixmaster Morris doing an interview sometime back in around that time and saying the techno needed to move beyond the 909, and it always sort of stuck in my head around that time. It is true, but nothing works like a 909 as well in a club. I mean, you can argue, the cultural impact of the 909 is, so great, it's and it's still going strong, But actually, can I pick out a question from here? Because there was one or two that sort of linked together. Somebody said here, a Joni said, and it kind of ties into what Luke Willikins said here as well. Has the recent emphasis on huge kick drums taken away from the overall groove of techno? Yes, I'm just going to answer that and go yes.
There you go.
I don't know. I could probably add more opinion on that, but I don't know. What do other people think of that? I mean, nothing wrong with a good heavy kick drum, but it has really gone, almost all in that direction. A lot of it,
I think, to be honest, man, like what I was finding with techno from the last 3 or 4 years is that, groove has been lost a little bit, but it's also like people are trying to be hardcore rather than just having hardcore sounds that fit their sound, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, the character doesn't always gel,
It's like-
sort of. Yeah.
It's like you can have massive kick drum and still have plenty of groove, but it depends what else you put in the track. But I've found that everything's become a little bit too straight, a little bit too 4/4, you know.
Yeah, it's also really hard to mix. If you have like immense kick drums, if you still want to have like a lot of other instruments in there that make that groove, it's harder to mix, but it's possible though. It's really possible to do something that is really rolling and can still have that big kick drum, but you hear all the other stuff is actually clearly like rumbling in there as well.
Yeah, and it's a bit more rhythmic or whatever. I think the thing with the old kind of a lot of older techno, especially as it got further into the late 90s and early 2000s, where people were using a lot of kind of, well, obviously breakbeats were in dance music before that as well, but it did see like even like the tribal sounds. There was a lot of these kind of like there was these built-in rhythms in addition to what was programmed off the computer or through the machines, and naturally a lot of the faster, harder stuff had this sort of extra rhythm in it. And I think that's why some of the 90s stuff is still really, really popular, and why some people are kind of often looking back to some of those older records. It's not to listen, that was then, this is now, but it does seem like naturally a lot of the kind of the newer sort of your whatever you want to call it kind of techno of the moment, and a lot of, somebody mentioned fast BPMs here as well. There is a lot of that stuff that's just all about the kind of the impact of the kick, but not much kind of rolling around it. And not, I don't know, listen, I like a lot of stuff that's out there now as well, but I kind of like that there's just some kind of stuff tacked into it as well. There's a groove, but there's a little bit of, I don't know, a little bit of something else that makes it a little, you can clasp onto it, you know. That's what I like.
I think some of it has to do also with the where these things are being produced, you know, like you can see that the sort of massive kick obsession is quite you know, mostly true for the younger producers, and you know they produce on smaller speakers, and you know, if you've released many records, you know, at some point you learn how the stuff you make in your studio translates to bigger systems, you know. And if you don't have that experience, it's quite possible that you kind of overdo it. You know, you overdo it in the studio. You think, I want a really loud kick, so you know, people put in kick drums with massive decays and really upfront in the mix, and it's really not really that necessary, you know, because you basically just bury all the other stuff.
Do you think the loud? Sorry, were you going to come in, Andrew? Sorry.
That's okay. Where you going?
No, because I remember, I don't know when the conversation about loudness wars started. It probably started with like Dire Straits in the mid '80s, or maybe even before that, you know. But obviously, it's a conversation that's sort of that we know and are used to in dance music and electronic music. I mean, can it keep going? Can it keep going? Like, and has it reached its peak, or is it gonna? It just seems like it's still been push. I don't know. And have sound systems. One thing that I think that's probably understated a little bit in techno is sound systems as well. Sound systems got more powerful, so that impact of a big kick drum is like another experience again that you wouldn't have necessarily felt in now. Some of you might tell me otherwise about events that you were at in the 90s where you were listening to the best system ever, but at the same time, it does feel, I don't know, in the old days, like people would have talked about the turbo sound and 10K this, whereas now it's like function one, void, it's like these huge, you know, big imposing sound systems, and even the casual listener sort of and club goer knows what the sound system is. But one thing I feel that really had it kind of coloured the sound of techno and dance music a little bit as well, which is good because it's about sound system culture as well coming into the music. But I think it's affected techno in a different type of way as well. I don't know if that's at a loss of the groove as well. But anyway, yeah, just
well, you bring up like 20 threads in this thing. I know. Yeah. I mean, you know, of course, you know, the way sound systems, or you know, the quality of the sound system and the way they sound over the decades has changed, and therefore also how music is being produced, because the ideal goal for everybody, I guess, is to have it translate really well on all systems. So if your system, the systems of today, they're capable of being way more, of reproducing sound way more natural. And I think in general, what you say about loudness wars, I think maybe it's just the people that I'm talking to, but I think people really do care about definition these days, instead of just being loud. I think we've for techno, we've kind of grew out of that, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think we can push the mastering and the compression that people are using on this stuff much more, to be honest, man, because most things these days are slammed. They're so compressed, they're so pushed so far that whenever you look at the waveform, it's just a block. You can't actually see the individual threads of a
until it's just pointless, because once you start comparing them on really high accurate sound systems, you're gonna notice the squashed one is just gonna sound less exciting. So
do you think
I disagree.
Oh, okay. Go.
I think you can still sound good when you're squashed, but it has to be like a deliberate choice and not to be like in a competition to be the loudest.
Yeah.
It has to be like something that you intended to do. Yeah, and I think then makes complete sense, and it's an artistic choice. But that's a different maybe. It's different than just pushing it because everyone else does it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the reason why you would want to do it is, of course, you're right. If it's an artistic choice, if it's an aesthetic thing, then it's fine. But I think the reason why people wanted it is if your track is being dropped, it needs to kind of stand out against the other ones, and I don't know, it's like an ego thing, I guess.
But this is what I don't understand. The people that DJ now realize that there's a thing.
Yeah, they have gain. Of course.
Gain.
Yeah.
Like you turn one down and turn the other up.
Well, and even on top of that, further down in the chain, there's always or most of the time there is some system processing, like limiters or compressors or something. So it doesn't really matter at all,
Yeah. Do you think as well, like maybe in the 90s people wouldn't have been playing CDs in the club, so therefore most people were playing vinyl. All of the tracks were mastered to vinyl.
Actually,
and it was
on
like
vinyl,
an analog process.
Yeah.
Whereas now a lot of people might make a track in the week, bounce it down, make it as loud as possible on something like, I don't know, Isotope, like mastering themselves, not really knowing what they're doing, and then they play it out and they think that it's going to sound good, but again, maybe they don't have good speakers in the studio to actually do the mastering on in the first place as well.
I don't know, but yeah, you're right. On vinyl, it does make a difference because if you have a loud cut, it's less vulnerable for resonating bass and stuff, and your noise floor is less apparent, stuff like that. So you wanna, if you do vinyl, you want to have your cut as loud as possible without distorting it, basically.
Yeah.
Or if distortion is your aesthetic, you can do it. But yeah, for vinyl, it makes a difference to the a nice workable reproduction of the sound. But for digital, it doesn't make a difference at all.
No. But yeah, maybe CDs changed it whenever it came to playing, because whenever I was still playing vinyl, I'll let Sunil have a dig now if he wants. Like the one thing I always noticed, it was whenever I came on to play the first record, no matter who was playing before you, if they were on CDs, the difference in volume was vast. It's like full as far as you can push on the gain stage for like vinyl. Like you probably need to be at about 9 o'clock in order to mix it with the CD properly.
Yeah, manufacturers have started to change that, on DJ mixers. Like the Zone 96 has a much more sort of coherent balance between the phono inputs and the line inputs. They kind of come out equal level. On the previous ones, you really needed to gain them up a lot.
I used to find exactly what Andrew was saying there. I remember, like, I remember years ago when there used to be like a DJ like that would come to town, like I'd say somebody even as big as Carl Cox or somebody like that. There would always be this sort of talk that, oh yeah, when Carl Cox comes on, they put him up louder, you know. So I don't know if it would be like that. You're just listening to them, and he just sounds much better when he comes on than the warm up DJ. But there was this illusion that we were all under, that like they keep the warm up DJ down lower. And then Carl's coming on. It's going, right, let's just bank. Let's just like put it way up so everyone knows he's here, you know. But actually, it's like what you're saying, that transition from vinyl to digital. And I found that for some gigs, like where you'd be, you know, playing before someone like Dave Clark or Surgeon, who's all in the laptop, and you just notice it like so much. You would just peak up so much more, and it's like. It can sometimes be it can be almost a little bit demoralizing, actually, because you've played a set that was enjoyable and that you think other people enjoyed as well, but then they just get so much level out of it, and it's just like, right, because in some cases, if I was to push it anymore, I was already maybe battling a little bit against feedback and stuff like that. And if I was to, like, if the bass was really to be felt there, you know, I was on the stage, and you know, you sometimes as well with record decks as well, it's just like the positioning is terrible. You're on a stage and the bass bins are right underneath you, and it's just like you're kind of there's limits being set for you, and then you're struggling, sweating, going, oh Jesus, you know, and it's like hoping that nothing's going to go wrong, and then and getting through it, and then someone comes on and they sound like, I don't know, a number of dBs louder than you, but yeah.
Yeah, it happens with you know, DJ sets versus people who play with live instruments. You know, how is your experience with that, Andrew? Because I know you've done tons and tons of live shows. Have you ever had the feeling you had to compete in terms of level with, or did you notice a difference?
Yeah, I mean, quite a few times when you come on, you might think that you're sounding a bit quiet or whatever, but you know, so it's just a case, I suppose, of trying to turning it up. Yeah. But I mean, there's other times where I know that whenever myself and Dimitri were playing, like sometimes we were way too loud, like coming straight in from the act that was on before, you know. So there's also the balancing act of like, maybe you've done the sound check and it sounded really good in the empty club, but then as the club filled up and all the rest, maybe you need to start readjusting again as soon as you do start to play live, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, you know, even though the level might be lower when you do live stuff, I try to get people's ears tuned to the less loud impression and just get more into the dynamics of the sound, you know.
Yeah.
You know, once you know you're 5 minutes in, people have forgot about the level difference. I guess.
Levels are, yeah.
That's why a lot of the time, whenever I would just start a DJ set, sometimes I just would have played like a noise or a drone for the first minute or two, just to like almost calm everything down, and then like restart, you know.
Yeah.
Same with BPM as well. If someone's played really fast before you and you're resettling, it's like from when they hear that first kick, they just, I don't know, get used to it again or whatever.
Yeah, I think people's brains just retune automatically, don't they? Mm-hmm. But you need to give them those 5 minutes in order to like reconnect with what you're gonna do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a lot of people who mistake energy for BPMs. You know, like, oh man, that was a fast set, and then you're like, no, it wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, tempo's sometimes a weird thing, isn't it? Sometimes it's like it feels really fast, but actually it's not. And other times it feels really slow, but it's actually really fast.
Beat Builder has a question about controlling loudness on your live setup. Did you have anything? He's suggesting, or she is suggesting, an auto boom as a master insert. Do you have any kind of mastering or bus processing going on when you play live, Andrew?
No, not really. It was just some distortion pedals on like sends and returns and stuff like that. I would do stuff like that in the studio as well, where I would use distortion, but I'd maybe use two or three distortions, and I'd take them from this. I have like an old Mackie desk which has like 4 returns on it, 4 sends and returns. But rather going into returns, I go into actual channels on the desk, and then that way I can like do weird stuff like feedback the actual distortion loop into itself. From the distortion
feedback distortion loop, yeah.
So it's like, you know, maybe I use one for bass and like feed it back into itself to give it extra bass, and then maybe the other one I make really sharp and metallic sounding so that it gives like the highs more present.
Oh wow, that's quite dangerous stuff, man. That you're doing for in a live environment.
So that's the reason why we're doing it, right? It's like either
that's
take
true.
You take the risk to try and do it, or you
Yeah.
can just stand with the laptop and play a nice safe set that you've already got pre-balanced, you know?
No, very true. Absolutely, it needs to be dangerous for sure. Absolutely.
It's like when
but
you DJ,
it's like maybe not in terms of sonic accidents, though. I mean, I like to keep those to a minimum, but introduce the danger in the actual playing. In the, if you don't do anything, nothing's going to happen. That kind of stuff. Setting yourself up to fail. Basically, that's the best way to play live.
Yeah, rocking up with two machines, no idea what you're going to do, and then just make it up on the spot. It's
yeah.
Sort of the fear factor that you need sometimes to like kickstart yourself into it.
Yeah, it's true.
Actually, Andrew, as a matter of interest, now that you're sort of more, a solo artist, you're only kind of doing stuff yourself. How will that affect? Because I know myself, even from doing live sets with Matt, with the tinfoil stuff and that. I mean, I two pairs of hands are better than one. How will you? How do you feel about doing live sets now on your own? Will it be a new? It'll be a new approach, obviously, to some degree.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's definitely going to be a new approach, and also because I've been making more like jungle and IDM and like doing loads of like weird editing on breaks and stuff like that. I think, to be honest, I'll use like a combination of, I'll use Ableton, but I'll run all of the actual, whatever I'm using in Ableton, I'll run the channels into the desk. And then from there, I'll use like a modular and some other stuff that I can improvise everything on top as well. Because I think maybe with just doing it by yourself, it's better to have some control as well as the madness rather than just having total madness.
What would be the things that you think are important to have control over, and what things are you just automating or relying on?
I think more for breakbeats and stuff in jungle, or if you're going to do like breakcore where you're going to want to have like, the breakbeat changing every other bar, I think it's important to have that sort of thing already cut up so that you can actually do it in the correct way. It's like you can't halfway through a set say, oh, hold on, I'm just going to edit this break and like...
How would you do that technically, though? I mean, how would you make like a sort of like... an unassembled beat into something assembled and with the possibility to change? How would you go about that? With something like an octatrack or something?
I was thinking, an octatrack could be done with, or an Akai or something like that. But maybe I was thinking more having breaks and like some like weird processing going on in the computer, run it to the desk, and then have like a drum machine and a modular as well, so that you can also be like, it's more of a jam, even though you do have a certain amount of control already there, I'm not too sure about actually just having everything 100% in the computer so that I can have the control already done, because I don't know, I think sometimes you need, like you said, you need that edge where you're feeling a bit like what's going to happen, in order to make it actually interesting for yourself and for other people too.
And do you like big setups to like take everything on stage, which you have in the studio? I've seen some like A&D setups that were pretty intense, like the amount of gear that was there.
Sometimes it's good, but to be honest, I think, as I said earlier, I think if you have 2 or 3 things, I think it's enough. You've only got so many hands, and you've only got like a certain length of time to do something. So pick a drum machine that has plenty of versatility, as well as having maybe one synthesizer that can also have a lot of breadth in the sounds that you can produce with it. Or maybe even use like a looper pedal, just like loop up a bass line from the synth, and then as you record the loop of the bass line in, then recreate like a lead to go on top, and then that way everything sort of sits in the same dynamic range as well.
Casimir, when you play, do you DJ or do you play live, or do you do both?
It's more a hybrid setup. So I would play mostly my own stuff, or like stems, or like even full tracks. But then I would also use other people's music, sometimes bits from things that I like or that I wouldn't make myself, but I would like to play. So I'm not really limiting myself because I'm using a laptop most of the time, but pretending to be a DJ, something like that.
So do you use Ableton or Tractor or what? How do you?
I use Ableton since the beginning. I think that is. I mean, on stage, I use other DAWs in the studio, but on stage, Ableton is really. I mean, it's very versatile. You can still use Max for Live. It runs very quickly. You can use plugins all the time, and I mean, it's really made for live sets. So
Yeah.
yeah, I've been using this forever. Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
I've also seen you, Casimir, use like your analog rhythm and your modular
Yeah.
and stuff in live shows as well, right?
Yeah. Sometimes I leave the computer and I just do that, but then it's more like I prepare still like some patterns or like some sounds, and I try to like be not as prepared as with Ableton, but still like some kind of that you have some go-tos. I find that very important because I mean performing can be a lot of anxiety as well, and I wanna have like some improvisation going and still feel creative on stage and not be completely baffled with all the gear, and because I'm kind of I'm more a studio musician than a DJ really, I think.
How have each of you reacted, actually, any yourself, Joachim, as well, playing live, but when a piece of gear goes down on you randomly, it just stops working? I mean, how have any of you how have you adapted in that situation? I mean, it happened to myself and Matt a couple of times, a few times actually, and it's always, in one particular case, it was in one really big gig that we had that we like really thought about a lot, and it was, for us there was a lot riding on it. We really wanted to do our best. Every set is always every next set is the best set you want to do, and for this particular one we kind of put all of our, and then suddenly we actually our equipment didn't arrive as well. That was the other thing, so it nearly didn't even make it for the gig. That was the other thing. And then also on top of that, if I remember correctly, I had to start DJing directly after our live set as well. And it was a Weird Al night, but what happened in the end was, I forget what stopped. All of a sudden things just went out of sync, and then a synth just dropped out and never came back. And it was just one of those ones that it was like, we got through it, like listening, like the crowd kind of stuck with us, obviously, because they've no choice but either leave or stick with you, but it like we had to kind of just stick with what we had. But it does make me think sometimes, it's like what you were saying about taking risks, Andrew, and kind of just live by the sword or whatever and just see what happens. It's I just wondering how any of you kind of reacted in those situations if you lost a beat, like you were saying as well, Casimir, the kind of maybe not the anxiety, but the pressure of having stuff, like if something does stop working. Yeah, how have any of you reacted in those cases? Do you panic, or do you just sort of slow it down a little bit and just think about it, or what happens?
Yeah, I had that with a Eurorack that stopped working, and all my effects were gone, so I just had to keep it dry, and it was just a drum machine, and I wasn't really prepared for that, but I still went with it and just tried to focus on just really heavy drums without any like possibilities to like have long reverbs or crazy delays or flanging things, or even the clouds was in there, which I heavily prepared for, like because you can make a pad from even just a drum sound, or like immediately you can like go from drums to pads, and that was gone. So that was not cool.
But you survived.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, my rule is just to act if it is all deliberate. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, once you start panicking, and once you start sort of questioning yourself and be shaken by the whole situation, then things are very likely to go wrong. But if you just accept the fact, okay, now I lost this engine, let's fly on one engine, and see what happens. I mean, it's possible, Just don't panic, Just continue, I guess. Just use your imagination.
You sort of panic at first, but then it's like you're just like, you know what, it's dead. It doesn't matter. Just move on. Or
yeah, and it happened to me several times, but quite a lot of times actually. But nobody ever comes up to you afterwards, saying, "Oh, you know, it was a nice set, but when this machine stopped working, it was crap, you know. Never happens, you know. It's always like, okay, you try to rescue whatever you have left, you know, and just go with it, and nobody ever notices.
And it's generally the sets that you think are rubbish that everyone else think are great, and vice versa. The ones where you think you smashed it, most people are like, yeah, it was okay, man, it was all right.
You have to be careful about that sometimes, because sometimes when you come away from a set that people enjoyed, I've always had a habit of this, is somebody tells me they really enjoyed it, and I tell them all the reasons why it wasn't a good set. I say, no, it wasn't. And they're like, oh, but it was. No, it wasn't, because this and that and this. And it's like, you're kind of, sometimes you're just better to let people kind of, just think what they think, I suppose.
Yeah, I sort of did the same, man. I used to be very honest with people, like, oh no, that was terrible, and in the end, experience taught me just to say thanks very much.
Yeah.
You know, like, move on to the next one.
Can I answer this question here? Somebody just asked one quickly about one turntable. I know we're talking about DJing here and we shouldn't be, but that happened at a club called Q Club in Birmingham one night, where literally the decks were not playing ball at all, okay? And great space, all right. So James Ruskin was on beforehand, and he was on 3 CDJs. He was killing it. Like, sometimes James, when he's on form, he's just brilliant, you know. I've seen James play sometimes where he's not maybe totally in the mood, and just he'll play a good set, but when he's on it, he's really, really on it. And I remember this time, kind of, it was good, because you know when you're playing before someone, that they're giving you a good slap in the face, kind of, like, right, gonna fucking, you know, get into it here. And I went on, and I just sort of, you could literally see the deck shaking, like you could see just the sort of the friction. And I remember just his look going kind of like, well, look at that, you know, kind of in a nice way, you know. But anyway, in the end, I just had to stop using one of the decks. And yeah, like this, Dan says here, I just had to like play a tune and then just kind of do a little bit of a reverb trail out on it while I took it off and just put another one on. So I had to do that for about 30 or 40 minutes. There was another DJ called Binny, who you might know, a really good producer. So he was meant to play there. They opened up the second room and they just shut down the first room then, but it was a bit unfortunate. But yeah, one of those ones where you can't really do much about it, you know. But yeah.
Playing with one. Yeah, that sounds quite a challenge, man. It's good that you actually took it all the way through the end. You know, you could have also just said, okay, you know, this is not going to work.
Well,
sorry about it.
Yeah, I played for about 30 or 40 minutes, and I think it was just getting to the stage where it was. I don't know.
It was starting to get a bit obvious that there's going to be a delay.
I don't know. It was already a struggle even with that deck then at this point as well. So, and it was funny because I won't say, but you know, somebody came a bit later and said, "Oh yeah, I saw there was something with the records there earlier. Yeah, I noticed that. I should have said it to you." And it's kind of like, well, you know, okay. But anyway, yeah, I know, fair enough. They're good. I forget the name of the crew that were running that night. Really nice crew, but they were, whatever way it got set up that night, it wasn't. Less people playing records in clubs now, I suppose. They're not as maintained as well. But
yeah. Or it was like whenever they brought out, you know, like the Lifeboy things that they would put the record players on. You remember them, Sunil, like the blow up ones, and it's like. I remember the first time I ever used one of them, and like you go to touch the record, and it's like, whoa.
It bobbles. yeah, they're dicey to use, you know, because some people go, "Oh, we have these things, these little lilos that you put under, you know, we'll all have a little, I don't know," but it's not good. And then when people have the hanging setups as well. If you're told in advance, if somebody tells you in advance that, then you're ready for it. Because I remember the first time using one of those. And it would sort of kind of bobble. But once you're ready for it, you just take it a little bit easier when you throw it in, and then it does. You know, you don't get feedback. So I prefer those to those other lads.
Lifeboy things.
Lifeboys. Yeah.
Going back to live shows, what are you using, Jochen, for your live shows? When have you did like Public Energy for Unpolished?
That was a laptop and a 909 and some out, you know, some little units like some auto machines and an Octatrack. So basically a combination, like Casimir said, you know, like a combination of your own stuff and it'll still be able to play like loops of records and stuff like that, you know, sort of like a hybrid thing.
So like use stems and then improvise on top?
Yeah.
Stuff thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean the way I would do it now is probably more live than that, you know. But that was basically all I had time to prepare for at that time, you know. And I was really into the playing like that, you know, with Tractor. That we would with my, you know, I don't use Tractor only for records, other people's records, but also, you know, my own stems and my own loops and beats and noises and whatever. Or just, you know, stitch things together in different combinations. I prefer Tractor over Ableton for that, because Ableton kind of makes me play down a list, if you know what I mean. Like if you all got all these things stacked inside the clip view or whatever. There's nothing you can change, you know. And in Tractor, you can just sort of go through your playlist as if it was a record box, you know. You can sort of stumble upon things and okay, let me play this. Actually, we discussed this last week, and Robin Kamschoor has found a nice system to deal with that, because he has like dummy tracks that he can sort of go to, and then basically there are like lists of stuff under each of those dummy ones. So he has like a massive list of stuff in Ableton, and he still has quick access to them. So that I never came up with that idea, but for that reason I use Tractor, because it's more sort of random, you know. I like to just go, you know, just do it on the fly. Basically, that's the like a DJing basically.
How do you use Ableton? Do you like use the scene launch and all that stuff? And you put like the BPMs in there, because there's actually a way that you can put like a massive amount of tracks. And I mean, if your computer can handle it, you can actually put just like 2,000 clips in there or more, and just put it all in the right order. But then you can still like go down and like say, oh, I want this now. You can. That's the way I do it, just to keep it like fresh on the stage, so I can.
Yeah, so you found your system to deal with it. Yeah, I mean, that's I did live sets in the early days when Ableton came out, and I used it basically as a tape machine. So I would have like different tracks going, and then I would basically just improvise with them on a desk, you know. So pretty much like what Andrew does, you know, like you have all these loops going on, and then you basically kind of arrange, or you sort of form the tracks out of it by just working the desk, you know, like old school dub style basically. But I found that to be a good way, but I don't like to, you know, the way some people do it, like having clips and then sort of restart, you know, start a clip in the middle of something and then just change them bit by bit, you know. I don't care about starting and stopping clips, to be honest. I just have something rolling, and then I just improvise with that, you know, just manipulate it on the fly. That's really my thing.
How do you think things changed for you playing live? Because if I remember right, before when you used to play live, you were the MPC was your main kind of weapon of choice. If I remember right, when you were like with bringing the screen into things, you know, does that change how you actually play now? Do you think, or
me?
Yeah.
I mean, I've used so many different live setups, you know, but I think the common thing throughout all the setups was the unfinished nature of whatever I had programmed in there. Like I just have stuff prepared, and then the whole thing comes together when I perform it, you know. So there's no prearranged tracks. I'm not stuck to lengths or arrangements or anything, or even combinations. And a lot of what I do is just manipulating stuff on the fly and sort of, you know, create energy, doing that basically, instead of it's like DJing with 16 tracks, you know, or something, you know, like having everything split out on a desk is probably the thing I like most. But yeah, in the MPC was the same thing, you know. It was just spitting out channels, and then they would appear on the desk, and you know, I had some other samplers, or I think even a K2000, and you know, some rec gear in that setup. But I've also used like groove boxes, like the SU700. I had two of those, and then I mixed between them.
The Yamaha, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, which is another system that kind of, you know, sort of basic just loops things, and you can sort of arrange things on the fly.
It's almost amazing sometimes how far you can actually stretch like tiny, like say you have like 4-bar loops and you have 8 sections of it. sometimes you can do like over 10 minutes with,
Oh,
with
man.
just
Yeah,
that
yeah,
one set
yeah.
of loops, you know.
Absolutely, yeah.
But you definitely need the desk in order to be able to do that, so that you can, you know, combine it with other effects, and also like you're actually having a mix with it, you know.
Yeah, it's so, you know, some things are just not important to have control over, you know, and the things that do matter to make dramatic changes are the ones that you want control over, and that's usually the big things like taking out the bass, or, you know, adding some effects, or you know, have some kind of control over the whole you know, the, assembling, you know, stacking things or whatever, you know, strip it down instantly, stuff like that, you know, like having basically the big things matter when you play live, not the tiny things like the panning of your hi-hat or something that doesn't really make a difference. So you can forget about that, you know.
As long as people can hear that big kick drum, you're okay.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. I see Eric de Man. What's up, dude?
Hello.
Yeah, I'm just bringing him up. I think it's just part of a conversation I didn't follow. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So Andrew, can you show us what you are sitting in front of? Like you've got some racks there, like Euro rack stuff.
Have some Euro rack stuff. Have a huge amount of pedals on here as well. I would say at the minute, like
Your secret weapons.
secret weapons. This is the Impaler from Colossus Audio. This is the
nice.
This is a new company that Arcana started. This is like really killer, like distortion unit, because it's got like a tiny like LFO sync on it, so you can actually like you can do some really interesting stuff, like whenever you're switching between like the low and the high pass mode on it, and giving it LFO gates at the same time.
Yeah, he's doing some amazing stuff, man. We had him on the chat a while back. You know, his stuff is amazing. It looks great too.
Yeah, no, he's got a new one come out that I'm actually ordered off him called Doom Messiah as well. It's like a little distortion unit with like a feedback section and some other stuff on it. And then this one is called God Eater. This is the Animal Amplification Factory. It's like by a guy from Bombay, and it's like a killer fuzz distortion machine. You've got like a couple of different diodes inside and a couple of switches between some other stuff on it, which is nice. And yeah, I mean, with the modular stuff, it's just never-ending story, really.
A work in progress.
I started with something this size, and this is like some of the stuff that I've got now. So it's like,
yeah, that's what happens, eh?
Yeah,
it's a vortex.
And it's like, you know, you buy one ADSR and you think, oh, I'm done. I've got 5 now. I definitely don't need another one. And then a new one comes out, and you're like, looks pretty good, that one. I might need to buy it. But I've been enjoying the Shapeshifter and stuff by IntelliGel recently. It's like something that I bought maybe about a year ago, and took me a while to get my head around it, because it's like loads of like sort of, it's almost like screen diving to get to the different modes from within it, but it's very complex oscillator. It's loads of fun.
So, if you use pedals, I mean, all pedals are usually mono, right? So, how do you take care of? Yeah. So, do you ever feel the need to stereo things up a little bit? And if so, how do you do that? How do you go about that?
I have like what I do is like,
because your music sounds pretty wide, you know. It does have a very a big sense of space, you know. But how do you go from like a pedal, like a mono source, to something that sounds big?
What I've been doing recently is like I have like multiples within my like Euro rack, and I have like the Pulsar 23 drum machine as well that I've been like getting my head around. It's also loads of fun, but it's weird because that's obviously like mainly a mono for everything to come out of. But what I do is I just use it the way I treat modular stuff, whereas I put it into like a multiple and turn it into stereo that way.
Right. Okay.
So rather than having
but that's two of the same mono signals band basically. Just okay. So you don't have any mono to stereo tricks, in terms of spaciousness. I mean.
No, not really. Not really, man. I've been doing it.
Fair enough.
Like, for example, if I'm going to the desk, I'll literally just take the 2 mono and split them completely left and right. You know, just like simple things like that, or else using like delay or reverbs which have like a nice stereo output on them in order to like give the breadth, but no tricks as such.
Right.
If you have an older desk, sometimes the stereo channel is a little bit off. If you put like a mono signal in it, it goes like a little bit, how to say, asymmetrical, and that's actually, it's not really stereo, but it does something to your stereo image as well. I just saw that like accidentally like a while back when I was making tracks without looking at my signal, actually just sounded good. I wasn't asking myself, but it did something with the stereo.
Yeah, it's funny how you discover these things sometimes. Like little imperfections become features. Turning bugs into features. Yeah.
It's like you try to work out how to make that the prominent sound, the little like the little weirdness that's going on in the background.
Out, yeah.
Yeah. So what else is in your studio except for the radio, Casimir?
Maybe I gotta turn the screen a little bit. So this is gonna be my travel case, and this has been the case that I've been using for a longer time. This is a BSS compressor, which I recently got, the Oberheim 1000, which I have for a very long time. It's maybe my favorite synth. Not really at the moment, but like maybe my favorite synth in general, because it gets stuck because it's like you're programming it with a computer program, and then it doesn't pick up in real time, so the waveforms sometimes get stuck, but it's completely analog, so it's really beautiful, and I've been using that to my own advantage, really. Yeah, the stuckness of that instrument.
The stuckness.
Yeah, and then there's Frank from Ghost in the Machine's Yamaha A4000 sampler, which is really good for effects as well, and filters and bit crushing and all that stuff. And then there's a Solano custom built thing from my landlord. Just gave that to me, and it's actually a really nice thing, but it's very harsh and it's made for guitars mainly, but you can do some cool synth stuff with it as well. Yeah, and then over there is a GP8080 and a Moog, and yeah, some other stuff. Just everything gets turned on once in a while. Not everything at the same time.
Yeah. Like I was saying earlier, it's like you turn everything on some days and you think, yes, I'm going to use everything, but you never do.
Yeah. I mean, there's more stuff, but I mean, yeah, it doesn't really matter. I think like it maybe in some particular moment it matters, but I think in the end sometimes I even don't know, like after all the processing, what kind of synth it was. Like I have this Alpha Juno, which has this very specific sound from that time, and it can do all the hoovers and all that stuff, but that's not really what you can get out of it. If you have a lot of processing, you can actually do really beautiful pads and like almost organic sounding things on like the background, and it can do that as well. And yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, to be honest, I think like the effects, the way you use your effects and processing your sound sometimes is what makes a sound more so than the actual original source.
Yeah, definitely. I started with Eurorack just to have effects and filters, and and that's mainly what I'm still into. Like if there's something like specific, like the Wasp filter or something, which is actually fairly cheap, but it has very specific sound. I wouldn't like want the oscillator of that synth from back in the day, but that filter is really cool, and you can put it on any source, and had that really bubbly, resonant kind of thing going on. I like that.
Yeah, I can I can spot the Wasp, if I'm not correct, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. There's a question from Dan Craig. Is the turntable part of your setup? The one?
Yeah, recently more, and I love to like buy stuff from a random shop that and stuff that I don't know. Like if it's the cheaper the better. I'll just buy the record and then put it on and be really excited if I can like play it backwards and
discover the hidden messages.
Yeah, just stuff that you can do with vinyl. But I'm in my early stages with vinyl in general. Actually, I've collected vinyls over the years, and I had one turntable a long time ago, like 10 years ago. But that one broke, and since then I didn't really have one. But this one I have now for a couple of months, and I'm slowly feeling it, I think.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a really nice idea just to buy random vinyls and then just see what they have, you know, just to discover, use them as an archaeological site, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I bought a tape machine once, and it came with tapes with stuff recorded by a band, you know, and they were like, I don't know, not finished songs, but just jams and noises and stuff. And I was just blown away by what I found on those tapes. There were so many usable things.
Nice.
It's very cool. Yeah.
Is that one of your secrets, Joachim, to the sound?
Oh yeah, man. Of course. Yeah, that's the thing. It's all coming from the tapes, man.
Nice.
I actually have a question for you, Joachim, which I wanted to ask for a very long time. One of my favorite albums of you is the Shocking Hobby, which is for me like I would say at least in my top 3 because of how it flows from beginning to end, and it doesn't seem to stop. Like, I mean, it was even like a real inspiration for my latest album, because that one also doesn't really cut in between, and that one is like that as well. It has one sound, and does it have I mean, I have so many questions about that album, but
well, yeah, go for it.
In what state were you when you were making that? Like, was it
what state?
Was it yeah, I don't know. Was it a quick job, or what was it?
No, I think to kind of sum up the process that I was using mostly that time was it was just before DAWs became capable of handling audio. So everything was done with hardware samplers, and I mean, as sort of the main part of the kit. And what I would do usually is because back, you know, at the end of the big samplers era, they all had pretty decent memory, you know. Like in the beginning, you had 2 megabytes and that was it. But they, you know, the ones that I used around that time, like 64 or something, you know, like plenty of memory, and nothing to today's standards, but for me, like a shitload of room to experiment. And what I would do is just program synths and drum machines, fuck them up on a mixing desk with all kinds of effects, and then just sample loops out of them. Basically, what you would do these days with Ableton, just making clips out of them, you know, and then just rearrange them, and like you just basically produce your album, just pre-produce elements and then just throw them together very quickly. That's how sort of the majority of the structure of those albums came together.
It's really crazy because every sound sounds like it belongs there, and it really communicates with the next sound, and it's a very harmonic album. It's really, really insane.
Well, what I like about using big chunks is that you could basically produce like almost the complete backbone of a track as like a 1 hour jam or something, where all these things are happening and where you're modulating and fooling around with effects and sort of go wilder and wilder, as the jam goes along, you basically just try everything you can come up with. And then you just pick out 1 bar, 4 bar, 8 bar loops or chunks, and then you can stitch them together, which basically already dictate the arrangement of the song very quickly, So it's. I mean, the jams were also made with the idea that I was going to sample them, so you could already create like sort of more sparse parts and more busy parts, and breaks and whatever, or build-ups, stuff like that. So it was yeah, pretty much all done like that. And then, you know, once those were had like some kind of shape, I would stack other stuff on top, you know, and you know, layer things. It's there is no one fixed way of working, but I would say I think what you're referring to as you know, the way the album sort of everything belongs together is because everything was built up from bigger chunks of audio.
Was there Joachim, just another question on that actually, was there a particular, like, were you influenced a lot by what was going on with, like, I know that was on, from what I remember, it was, what was it on actually? What label was it on? Was it Nova Mute?
Nova Mute.
Was it, yeah. I mean, it did seem to be, and it was quite distorted as well. Some very slower tracks as well. I think the one, probably my favorite one on it, is that Actor 9 track, which is really slow, but it's so, like, I've ended sets with that track. You know, that could have been, you'd be playing quite fast, but that just has just this other energy that sort of transcends BPMs. It's just actually the fact it is slow is really what gives it more impact. But obviously then where your productions went after that a bit, and then what was, you know, the paciness of the Euro techno sound as well, that seemed to kind of almost I don't know what the word would be, but it kind of signified a point in your production career, but almost like it was a period in your production career as well where you really went in at that. Like, was there what influenced you particularly to get into that kind of?
Actually, that track you're talking about is inspired by Schoolie D.
Oh, okay.
It's you know, like the big reverb on 909 type sound, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I don't know. I mean, there were so many things I was into, you know, and I'm inspired by music, but also about things that are not music, you know. And I think the main reason why it eventually sounds like it does is just the way I had my shit set up at that time, you know. Just I had I could route everything in through everything else, and it was like you know, I was coming from more like, you know, having one sound on one channel of the desk and kind of arrange your stuff, you know, like split out on the desk and then arrange them live. You know, that was the sort of the method I used before. And then I think it was the reason why it sounded like that. You know, in the end, it was like the ability to sample different sounds at different stages of the production, and then quickly throw them together. And the sound design was the big work, you know, the big part of it, because I spent ages and ages, you know, just fooling around with crazy routings, you know, and you know, making sound happening, and then you know, the whole thing came together quite quickly after that. And that was the reason why, you know, there was no there was no dance floor in mind, you know. It was just, you know, whatever sounded good with the sounds that I was doing, and some of it was slower than sort of dance floor
but
tempos.
There's like a lot of, I don't know the exact year when you were making. Was it 98?
I think the album came out in 90. I don't know. Yeah, 97. I think 97.
Oh wow.
No. Sorry, that was the other one. No, 98, 99, something like that. Yeah.
So what did you use to get like the spectral sound and all that stuff? Because that's pretty early on. Like that's even still now it's pretty rare to find.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I was using all these things from that, you know, students were making at universities. Like I found on sort of forums and bulletin boards and stuff like that. You know, like very experimental software. You know, there was shitloads out there at that time, you know, just people trying to, you know, make a little application that just did one thing, and it would crash half of the time. But it also gave me, or like even beta versions of early software things, like when Native Instruments started, they had something, you know, the thing that came before Reactor, I forgot the name. I used that quite a lot, and Ploak Bidul, and you know, Max MSP, you know, stuff like that. And yeah, so there was a lot of stuff out there, like mostly from the academic corner, you know, the academic area, like sonology students and stuff like that, you know, who were doing stuff. And Soundhack, you know, by Tom Erb.
Oh, Soundhack, yeah.
Yeah, it's been around for ages, man. Yeah,
it still exists, and
Yeah.
it runs on current OS.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the oldest ones. It's been around for ages. And the other thing I worked with for a while, but it was hard to manage, was the DSP, Composer's Desktop Project, by Trevor Wishart. It's like a non-real-time DSP program. And so there are like loads of DSP. And I thought the combination between that really sort of alien sound that can only be made with computers, against the sort of analog, thick, sort of distorted tube sounds of the stuff that I had back then. It's a nice contrast.
Do you still use your Kima system?
It's still here, but I haven't touched it for a while. It's sort of itching a bit. I want to get it back up. Yeah.
PSK.
Yeah, that's the Schoolie D one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the track, right?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe Sunil, can you describe your process? What is your weapon of choice these days?
I think at the moment, I mean, actually, if you want to know right now, I mean, like I said, I've gone mostly back into the computer, but what I really want to have is just like a small compact setup, just something that's all at hand. I think probably just a couple of things that I have now. I mean, even just from a control. Well, actually, what I was using mostly this week is I've been back out kind of doing some field recording and
nice.
stuff. So I mean, I'm nearly kind of starting again to some extent, because I think when I first started making music, like about the turn of the millennium, that kind of time, 20 years ago, would have been, I think the first few bits of gear I would have been things like the groove box, like the MC303, which you all thought was going to be a lot better than what it was, and the Electribe, stuff like that. But I did quickly get into making music with a computer, and by and large I've kind of mostly stayed in the box over the years. So I mean, like even now I want to sort of get back into it slowly but surely. So I mean, this is one little controller that I got recently. It's actually made by a company really close to it. It's all literally, basically you can play it with your fingers, so you just
like an accordion.
Well, so like so you can literally bend the notes like this, so you get really cool kind of like vibrato effect. I guess what I've always found that when I put keyboards and stuff in front of me, I don't really play them. Maybe it's because I don't have like a background in like playing the piano or playing. I can obviously. I will sometimes do, but more often than not, if I'm left to my own devices, I'm so used to programming stuff in the computer that I've just for a while I kind of went back to making stuff with for a while I went back to making stuff on gear for a while, but more often than not I found myself like there's a few bits like the SE1 synth. It's kind of like a mini Moog clone. I've got some good stuff out of that. There was it's in yeah, it does actually. Yeah. I'll have to try that later. Actually, I'm getting to be honest, I'm actually really starting from scratch at the moment. I mean, I could list off bits of gear that I have and drum machines and synths here and there, but invariably I end up just going back into the computer. But the reason why this field recording is probably quite important to me is because that's sort like. I think I've almost kind of got a little bit too used to doing stuff in the computer and getting a bit too used to the same plugins, the same effects, a little bit of that I used to really enjoy this, and I kind of want to start enjoying making music again. And like what Casimir and Andrew were talking about earlier about like putting banks of and sound design and kind of getting your artillery ready. That's what I was
going to ask.
That's what I used to do years ago, because I used to use Soundforge a lot. So at the beginning, like probably even before I got those first couple of drum machines and stuff, I was mostly just making stuff in software, like on various programs, and then just running them through something like Soundforge and just processing them until I had banks and banks of drum hits or whatever it might be. And then kind of what some of the others were saying there earlier, years on, then I remember like just finding stuff on hard drives and then using them and going, Jesus, that was a kick I made 10 years ago or something. So I don't know. I think there's a lot in that, and that's why I've enjoyed using Ableton a lot as well. Just like even just the sampling capabilities within the program itself are way better than they used to be. I think even just sound wise, Ableton has improved an awful lot. Like I wouldn't use the onboard EQs, for instance, but then again, they still got a lot better. And I suppose that's one of the things I've been trying to improve in my music, is just doing stuff within the digital realm, but making it sound wider, and not that the synths don't sound rattly when you take. There's just lots of things like that I've started to give a little bit more thought to. But then at the same time, I'm actually missing the feel of hardware a little bit as well. So I'm very much, even coming onto this show today, I'm really at a transition with my music making, because I've been so consumed with other things outside of making music that it's so I think sometimes when you're in a position like that, sometimes it's like trying to be inspired to make music again, or being inspired to like techno again, or any of these things. You sometimes have to return to the things you did first, or the things that were part of your process that really spurred you on in the first place. So in a way, I'm kind of going back to basics. So I was like, yesterday I was walking around the last couple of days, I was just like walking down to the local park with like a peeler, like a metal vegetable peeler, and hitting it off things and recording them. And actually, there's a really nice sort of set of railings, and I found myself kind of playing them yesterday, So I
can imagine the looks of your neighbors.
Yeah, well, it was funny because at the beginning I was kind of looking around because you are a bit. And I'm actually thinking about this because I remember years ago, myself and a friend, we used to go to certain places, and I found if you're field recording and want to kind of do stuff like this without looking a bit odd, you're sometimes better having somebody with you, because then it looks like, oh, there's two people, they're doing something. So if they're both doing something, they mustn't be mad. There's something going on here. Oh yeah, they must be doing that for something. But if you're another person like me coming in with like this and a peeler in my hands and stuff like that, if I went in with like a broom or like a, whatever it is that could make like a really good thwack, it wouldn't look the greatest. So I tried to kind of like go into I don't know, I'm trying to just find myself again with this. But yesterday I did find a great place where I just thought, fuck, I could actually come back here, but it's very close to where a lot of people will be walking. They're going to people are probably going to be thinking, what's up with that guy? But
you need to get a couple of mates to stand on the corner while you smash it out on the railing.
I actually don't mind. The way I'm looking at it is I'm just out walking like they are, except I'm making a little bit of noise. So
So if you go out and do a bunch of recordings on your field recorder, do you go in the studio or behind your computer straight away and try something with them, or are you just shelving them? And
I'm going to shelve them now. So what I'm starting to do is just like yesterday, for instance, I would have just put a name on the folder and where it was. See, I think as well, depending on location and where you go to, there's going to be a limit to what you can get from there. Do you know what I mean? So if you go into a park, there's maybe lampposts, railings, benches, gate. Do you know what I mean? And depending what way some of those railings are, you could get a nice kind of, going that way, and then it might sound a little bit differently going down that way. Obviously, then when I'm talking about playing it, you could do it really quickly like that, or you could go a little bit slowly. So I was kind of getting into a little bit of that, but it's kind of like what Andrew's talking about as well with limitations. I could get a lot out of that particular park, but now I'm kind of thinking like, I want to hear something a little bit different, and I want to hit something, but again, I don't want to bring a broomstick and look like too much of a fucking oddball, so it might be just the peeler for now, but I want to find somewhere else. But I just want to have a bit of fun getting ready for some tracks,
Do you do that by day or by night?
I did that during the day yesterday anyway. And I don't know. I mean, I'm only coming back to this a little bit now. Before, I found some of the better places were like going under bridges, and getting that, and you just get a lovely kind of kind of reverb. And I mean, you don't need to do much with those sounds. But something else I found useful, which was kind of getting me thinking about doing this again, was, sometimes when you're recording a gig where, or your digital recorder, but you've recorded the crowds with the ambient mic or whatever it might be. But there, I remember listening back to a recording, and it just continued to play on. And then I just heard like the people at the bar, they when they're like throwing all the bottles into the thing and everything smashes. And I just had this lovely lovely, just smashing kind of snare sort of thing. Actually, if anyone knows that tune I did on more, it's that Magpie Science, the real crashing kind of piece of percussion that comes in. That's the bar in some club in town, you know.
Nice.
It's those kind of like happy accidents sometimes, and I've found sometimes though I don't know, I kind of want to bring a little. I just feel if I have a little bit more of that at the ready, rather than just kind of loading up 909s and stuff like that. I always like a little bit. I like something that sort of, like I said, that kind of hangs in there a little bit. That isn't the, you know.
So do you use the sounds you record pretty much as they are, as they appear, or do you go stretch them out and fuck them up? And
I process them a little bit, but I think what I was sort of enjoying, even just about yesterday, was kind of like playing something as I would maybe like it to sound in the track. Do you know what I mean? So sometimes I might get something that will just turn into, you know, a 1 bar loop or a 4 bar loop, or else I might make it sound a little bit off kilter, a bit out of time, or on the 3 or on the 5 or whatever. But invariably, I think it kind of depends. I'm not gonna, like, there's some stuff that you can hit. Like, for instance, if you hit a bin, you know, you can make that sound like a bit of a kick. But what's the point in using, you know, a bin when you can kind of use a better kick that you have already? So, I mean, it depends. I like sort of like kind of, probably like the stuff I'm sure any of you get off Modular as well, when you just get a strange like a nice jagged kind of piece of, you know, percussion that kind of tears through in the mix, you know. I suppose that's some of the stuff I'd like to use for that. But also, I don't necessarily want it to all be really abrasive either. There's some stuff that can kind of just fall into the distance a little bit as well. So I think it's about building up some of that kind of sample material, you know, and just see where I go with it. Like I said, I just want to have fun making music, because for the last number of years, it's been sometimes felt like a little bit of a chore sometimes, you know. It's like, shit, I have to make music because I haven't done music in so long. Whereas now I kind of think like, well, how about enjoying it first and enjoying the process? And yeah, that's kind of a bit where I'm at the moment.
Are you a good archiver? Because if you work in the books, there must be some system to how you organize things.
Working where? Say that again.
An archiver, like
I'm a hoarder. I'm a hoarder of stuff. Maybe that's a nice way of saying that. But
no, I'm actually talking about the system behind the way you put sounds on your drive. Like, is there just one big bin that you throw everything into, or do you have some system to it?
No, I mean, I'd like to have a system, but I think I'm starting from scratch again to some extent, you know. So it's kind of like I do have. I mean, if I was to go back, no, it wouldn't be very well organised. But I want to. That's a good plan.
You need to get it. You need to get Discogs. You need to get Discogs for your Ableton.
Oh yeah, maybe. I mean, I think I like I said, it's just we'll see what way it goes. I do sort of want to get back. I do want to keep the setup kind of smallish. I do want to maybe I don't know, maybe collaborate a little bit with a few more people again, more so to have fun, not necessarily even just to release it. I know that's something you've done a lot, Joachim. I know you've been putting stuff out that you've collaborated with people, but I think there reaches a point as well where it's, well, for me anyway, where I just want to sort of enjoy it a bit more. When I was doing stuff with Matt with Defect, it was a totally different way of working for me at the time, you know, and he's more of a modular head, and I was sort of like just making music without using a screen was just it was something I really probably needed at the time. You know, I really started to enjoy making music. So doing live sets was, I think what I want to probably incorporate a little bit more is my voice. I've always used my voice. You probably know I like using my voice, but it's, I've always enjoyed that. So when I started using like vocal processors and stuff like that, I mean, that's what I probably want to get back into my music a little bit more. It's probably easier to use kind of vocal samples sometimes to get what you want, but I prefer to sort of use my own vocals. So I think that was probably something we did a lot in the live sets, me and Matt, where I used to do a lot of vocals. So I want to bring that back a little bit more. There was quite a lot
of the tinfoil stuff, Sunil, where you did use. Was it the Roland vocoder you were using at the time?
Yeah, the Roland V3, I think it was. And I mean, Yeah, I had to get a second one of those. Actually, it kind of eventually gave out, but it's
You got too excited, you burnt it out.
I don't know what happened. I think it was the power supply, or no, it wasn't the power supply because I could have just got another one. No, it ended up just packing in actually. But yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things I want to sort of bring back to it a little bit. So sort of like starting from scratch. But that was, and if we're just talking about live sets, that's something I don't know, that's the bit that I really love because I just felt, it kind of almost felt, and somebody asked there earlier, I don't know if we're going to be doing another tinfoil thing. We do have some material that possibly should have been tinfoil 7 that we never put out in the end. But, you know, both of our lives are in different sort of places. We're still in contact and still good friends, but maybe we haven't been making music together or planning any sets. But, you know, I'd never rule it out, you know, but yeah.
So, if you say you're working in the computer, Sunil, what sort of VSTs are you using these days? Because to be honest, like, you know, there's the quality and the sound quality of a lot of the plugins, as well as the effects that you can get now. They're so close to the original thing. It's like sometimes it doesn't really make that much of a difference.
I need to check, to be honest. Like sometimes I'm even just sort of like grabbing free ones here and there, and not even like kind of native instruments or some of the bigger. I mean, I never really got into Reactor and stuff like that. I would have used it here and there, but I like silent synths. That's probably one of my favorite ones, actually. I think probably one of the things I like to do with a lot of those things, I like ring modulators. That's probably one of the things that probably changes the sound. I like things to sound a little bit more detuned in general, you know, or sound a little, you know, a little kind of whatever you'll call it.
Have you tried VCV Rack? If you don't have any modular stuff, it's a perfect way to get into it because actually some of the I compared some of the modules I have to VCV Rack modules, and there's not much difference on some of them.
Yeah. I think the one for me, a lot of it is kind of like just what like I was saying earlier, kind of widening the sound out a little bit more and just getting a little bit more space in the sound. And I think one of the probably things that, and this is just more down to a composition or making music side of things, is with software, you know, the simplicity of a track is it sort of comes together a bit more naturally when you're maybe using hardware, whereas with software it's kind of easier to load up the channels and give yourself a bit of a nightmare when you're mixing. And it's like what, I forget who said it there earlier, but just like maybe you said it, Andrew, is like, oh well, I've only put this tune together in 2 minutes or in 2 hours, and is it that easy, you know? And sometimes I am making stuff on software that sort of like is relatively simple, but I'm thinking, God, there's so much more I could do here. So I have to keep making the track. So what I find happens a lot of the times in that case is I end up just moving and just deleting more stuff out of it. And then usually by the kind of the third version, it's completely different to what I made first time around. But it does take me I need a couple of days to get into it. And then if I get on a cycle of about a week or two, I start making loads of tracks. So I'm just that's what I'm sort of hoping for now, is to kind of start again and just getting that rhythm again. So, you know, I should probably know, oh yeah, this VST and that one and all the rest. But for me, it's a lot about just loading something up, seeing where my head's at, and just getting in the rhythm of it. And that might sound a bit maybe disrespectful to some of the VST things that I'm not named. There's not anything that springs to mind at the moment. I've been mostly using a lot of the same stuff, and very few bits, to be honest, actually. Here's a little thing that Tim got me. It's just a small little wavetable synth. Tim Hannigan, he's a bit of a legend over there. Here, it's a craft synth too. It's quite nice actually. It does. You can get kind of quite squealy kind of sounds out of, but at the same time get this kind of chordy Detroit thing going on in it as well. Relatively inexpensive as well. I don't know if you can see it there, but I'll show you there.
Yeah.
One of these lads. Yeah. So I'm just going to try and kind of keep it simple at the moment while using a lot of the kind of regular synths that I'm using. I do actually. I mean, there are some distortions as well that I'm enjoying. Even like free ones, like, you know, what's that Camel? Do you know that Camel plug-in?
Camel Fat.
Yeah, like that. What is Camel Fat? Is that not those lads?
Crusher.
Oh, Camel Crusher.
Camel Crusher.
There's a few of these kind of ones that I think are really excellent that people were telling me about before, but I never actually used. I remember when we did stuff in your studio in Manchester, Andrew, you were using all the sound. Remember the Sound Toys stuff, and there was like, the decapitator and stuff like that. At what point did you sort of start to change? Like, did you just feel that I don't like the sound of that distortion anymore, I'm going to get pedals now? And would you still stand by that kind of distortion now when you listen back to those records?
I still have decapitator and stuff on my computer, actually.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know, for me, I sort of always found I always loved the sound of those distortion units, and then once I started to buy more analog distortion units, I started to like not say that you can hear such a difference, but it's like the high end becomes warmer even if it's really harsh. Whereas sometimes whenever you keep distorting on a computer, the high end becomes a little bit like nuanced on your ear. If you know what I mean.
Lacking clarity or a bit of something.
But yeah, the other thing is like, I mean, I would do the same thing on a computer as what I would do on the mixing desk, which is just feed back the actual distortion into itself by putting it on the send and then feeding it like in a loop and stuff. You know, so it's like I don't think there's any real like answer to the, like digital or analog being better. It's just how you use it. You know.
Yeah, there's a kind of smoother, maybe smooth is the wrong word, but a lot of kind of like pedals and kind of distortion. I mean, I do like the likes of the analog heat. Is it the Electron yoke of you probably know Fran Hartnett. He has one of those, and Giles as well. And I mean, there's been a few ones like that I've kind of been interested in. I'm thinking, I like the sound of that, but I don't know. I'm not, like I said to you, when we were doing this or when we were organising this and all the rest, I'm not the most techie sort of techno producer in a way. I'm not like always checking up on what the next technology is that's coming out. But yeah, sort of feel like I'm starting from scratch a little bit in some ways now again.
Someone actually just put up in the comments there about Dent by Unfiltered Audio, which is actually a really good distortion unit.
Yeah,
it's got like sort of like patch points on it, so you can build. It's like almost like a little tiny modular. You can build your own effect of modulation within the actual like distortion.
Yeah,
it's done by a guy called Michael Hetrick, who does the Euro React modules for blocks in Reactor.
Yeah,
he did like 140 simulations of like actual analog gear and for Reactor, and it's also
savage, right? Okay, nice,
really good stuff.
Nice.
It's like a free package.
Nice. This is turning into the distortion episode. I'm enjoying it.
What distortion were you using back then at the end of the 90s, Joachim?
Oh, I mean, I don't know. I actually have like actual distortion pedals, some. But I, usually, I mean, anything with an analog signal path you can kind of drive, So there's, I think the nicest sound in the end is or for me at least, it's when you drive things at different stages of the chain. So a bit too much gain here, a bit too much gain there, and that just all accumulates into like a distortion you can't get from one single device, And it's just the way you treat the gear, is, or the sort of build signal paths and stuff like that, is how eventually your sound becomes. You can choose to be very, sort of modest or keep a lot of headroom everywhere, but you can also just push everything, and that in the end, by accumulating the sound in all those stages of the signal path, the one method clearly is different from the other one as you go along. If you keep things clean everywhere, it's going to be totally clean in the end. But if you drive stuff in the different stages of the chain, it's going to come out totally different. It doesn't need to be like recognizable as actual distortion all the time, but just a little bit of drive here and there. Just a little bit of saturation. Yeah. And I've used tape to saturate things or to distort things, tubes, actual distortion units, whatever, just gaining on the mixer, whatever. Just if it sounds good, it sounds good.
Yeah, even compressors used in the wrong way can make things super distorted and
Yeah, generally use everything in the wrong way is going to get you distortion. For sure. Yeah, and miking things as well, you know, just have a microphone sit in a sort of the corner of the studio or in another room and just have shit played through it and re-record it is also a really nice way to
That's amazing.
modify the sound, yeah.
Yeah, and then you get like the room ambience as well. Yeah, I really like that. To move the microphone as well while the sound is playing is also really
cool. Or just hang it from the ceiling and have it rotate like this, you know, so you get like long vibratos. You can also do that the other way around with having a Bluetooth speaker on a elastic band or something and just throw it so it just keeps bouncing and in the room and just record whatever is coming from the speaker and get some nice spatial stuff going on.
That's a true way to get your stereo fade, like you were asking earlier.
There you go. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
With shotgun microphones, it's even more specific. Like you like pointing to the cone and then far away from it, and you have like this kind of flapping sound or something. It's really crazy. I can't sometimes even imagine if like have a specific sound that I didn't do before, and then like, oh, what if I try with the shotgun? And it's something mostly I didn't imagine before. Like I think it's a cool trick.
Cool.
How much do all of you reference with headphones? How much of the time in production?
Yeah, I was going to ask that because both Andrew and Casimir say they work from home. So can you actually play music at a decent level where you are?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, to be honest, like working in the house, I don't have it as loud as what I would have done if I was having it in an actual studio space than before. But
do you feel you make different decisions because of that? Have you improved mixing skills? Because usually you improve when you learn to play or learn to mix on lower levels, you know.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think my mixing in general has got better since I've been having it lower, because sometimes whenever you listen to loud sound, you get encapsulated by it, you enjoy it because it's like,
more impressive, yeah.
It's like the effect, but if you keep, I don't know, I was like reading some tutorials on mastering and stuff like this, and it said that if you're for mixing and mastering, a good point of reference is to always have like the sound level at about 80 dB. So it's like loud enough that you can feel it, but also quiet enough that you also have to like understand if it's in the correct place or not, you know. Mm-hmm. So I've sort of just been trying to keep the volume lower, but then I also bought better speakers about a year ago, which allowed me to turn it down and actually hear it better too.
Which ones did you get?
I got the Focus, or I got the Focal Twin B6.
Yeah, they're nice. Cool.
They're not, I don't know, like Dimitri had always had Adams and stuff in the studio, and the Adams he had were like mastering grade ones, and the highs on them were super harsh to me, whereas on the Focal ones they're quite flat. Mm-mm. So I find it like quite easy actually to balance the sounds out on.
And as Sunil was already asking, are you using headphones as a second pair of speakers or a different reference?
Not really. I mean, afterwards I would always tend to go for walks and listen to what have been made, but I have like Bose in-ear noise cancelling headphones, mm-hmm. and for me they sound pretty good. So I've listened to a lot of music on them from traveling and walking.
Yeah, as long as you know what they sound like, then it's fine. Yeah, sure.
So as soon as I hear the track, like sometimes I have to go back to the house to change the level of something by 1 or 2 dB, bounce it down again, and then I can go for the walk because I know mm-hmm. straight away if it's off or not.
Yeah,
especially like kick and bass. You know what I mean? It's like it sounds very. If it's too much on those, it sounds too much.
Right. Yeah. What about you, Casimir? Your listening situation?
Yeah, I can get loud until 22, and then it's got to go a little bit quieter. And I miss making music at night, like very loud. I really like that. Like sometimes at 1, like you get your spark, and then I'm like blasting in headphones, and it's a little bit too much.
It can be fatiguing and tiring, yes, to blast your headphones.
Yes, especially these.
Always a good idea.
Like these like Sennheisers, they're really. I like them a lot because I'm used to it, but it's really. I had ringing ears many nights from this.
Watch out!
Yeah, me too.
I've done the same thing in the past, man. But actually, I got the AKG ones, which are like open, And actually, like, these are amazing because, like, they never really get too loud. And, like, you can work for quite a long period of time on them. I use, like, SonarWorks reference if I use those.
Oh yeah.
So that like balances out the
Yeah, but
the
also
cadence
using
of the actual. What's that, man?
oh, sorry. No, I'm also using different headphones for different things. I would use like the biodynamics for making drums, but I would never use it to just listen to music or mixes.
Yeah.
Why is that? Because you don't think they're giving you the right image, or
Yeah, maybe
you don't
it's
just
something
don't
in
like
my
the sound
head.
or whatever?
Maybe that's something in my head, but yeah, and then I have the AKG ones as well, but like probably different ones. I like that as well because it's a little bit the same as these. But the biodynamics, they're softer and like they have like a sort of more introverted sound. And I would say like these have more like an extroverted extreme.
I know what you mean. Yeah,
yeah.
they're really the Sennheisers, the one that you were using, are really sort of spanky and slamming, and the DT 990 is more. It sounds better if you play it at lower volume. You know, if you start blasting the Bayer, it's just really bad for your hearing, and you don't really get a better picture. You know,
Do you think that
it sounds more balanced? Yeah.
Yeah, do you think the response on like studio headphones are supposed to be flat though, so therefore that doesn't sound impressive?
Yeah.
Whereas on the Sennheiser and stuff, it's like it's more boomy, so you automatically think like, oh yeah, this bass is kicking, but it's actually not, you know?
Yeah.
I found a good balance on ones I got. They're called ultrasound. I don't know if you know these. They're called. I'm looking at. I don't have them in the room, but I checked up there. Ultrasound signature, because it's like yourself. If you're using ones almost like radio type of ones, like the what was it, the DT 100s, or were they the Bayer Dynamic ones that are ultra flat, versus something like the Sennheisers. These are, I don't know. I find you can actually put them up pretty loud, or what you perceive to be loud anyway, without kind of hurting your ears. Whereas I've always, whatever it is with sometimes with the likes of Sennheisers, there's always that room. I don't know. It always feels like you're giving yourself. They're pleasing to the ear, but they excite you, but the after damage isn't good. But I felt the ultrasound ones to be really good actually, and it's probably I probably trust them a little bit more now for stuff like panning and stuff, you know, whereas before, I'd actually nearly trusted it a little bit more than if I had the speaker placements. I don't really have a studio set up at the moment, but I for panning and stuff, I'm finding those headphones really good actually. So
that's exactly the thing that I'm using headphones for. You know, I usually mix on speakers, but just as a last check to see how I got the stereo image. You know, if I didn't make any mistakes or, you know, stuff like that, that's something I do on headphones just to be sure. I generally don't really mix on there, you know, just as a quick reference.
Do you use like different speakers at the same time as well? Like you switch between those like different speakers? Because I have these like KRKs, and I worked on that for very long time, and I had a different pair of KRKs as well, and I know they're not like high-end speakers, but I got used to it, and it worked for me. But recently I got Vocals, and they're more on the high-end side, like the Shape ones, and actually I got more nerdy in the first place, I would say, because you hear more. And so how do you do that? How do you make a decision for like what type of speaker you're gonna use for certain type of action or function?
Well, mainly I always have the main system on, which is a pair of PMCs and plus a big sub, and then I switch to Channel X, which are from another angle, you know. But this is quite a large room, so you know, it's gonna sound slightly different from every position. But I know it very well. I know the speakers. I've had the speakers for 20 years. I know the room very well. So pretty much I know what's going on. You know, when I'm doing something, I never really have to guess what I'm doing. You know, I always know where I'm at. You know, so I know what needs work and what doesn't, basically. So I'm not really too bothered about it. But I do switch between the two pairs and the headphones just to keep my perspective instead of just being fatigued by just listening to one source all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think as well, it's almost getting to know the speakers and the room at the same time.
Yeah,
it helps the most,
Yeah.
Because like whenever I moved back here and I'd been here for like a month or two, I was guessing where things were flying in the room.
Yeah. You need time, man. There's no way.
What's going on,
Yeah.
But then after maybe 2.5 months, like I was just okay, that's it, boom. And
you're using that SonarWorks thing, are you, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, I use it for the room because the room isn't treated actually, but I use it for headphones mainly because with the headphones it takes away all of the impedance of the actual like headphone unit.
Okay.
I wouldn't say it's 100% accurate, but I definitely would say it helps a lot because there's a lot of time where you might think that it sounds super bassy, but whenever you do the measurement might have a peak at the point where you think that it's actually too much, and then whenever it flattens out, it sounds completely different,
And if you use that in a room as well, like sending out the test tones and doing it that kind of way, so depending where you're going to, you just set it up again each time then, basically.
I would do that again, but like obviously for my next place, whenever I'm going to settle down, I'll also soundproof the room, It was just, this was like a temporary measure for like 6 months, so I didn't want to like start like knocking holes in the wall and stuff.
Yeah.
And also buying, loads of soundproofing and to have to actually move it away again somewhere else. So it's just like, I'll just wait. But strangely, I've sort of got, like, as I said, I sort of got used to it after a while. So.
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing, I mean, you can have endless discussions on what speakers are good and which ones aren't, but it's very personal. And as long as you know your set of speakers and your room, and you have a very, if you're confident that what you're hearing is actually what you're hearing, and you're not really guessing or anything, then it's fine. I mean, there's imperfection in every setup, so whatever. Anyway, guys, we are over 2 hours already, and don't want to go past Casimir's bedtime. I know you're traveling very early, so that's why I'm saying it. So yeah, I mean, normally we give everybody at the end a little opportunity to plug or announce something they've got coming up, any gigs, any streams, any releases, stuff like that, something you want to share with the audience. So maybe Casimir can go first. What do you want to share with the audience right now?
Well, I'm personally looking very much forward to Verknipt festival in like 2 weeks, I think, because as far as I heard, it's gonna be like full capacity for the first time. So I think that it's gonna be a kind of unleashing whatever has been resting for so long. Yeah. So I think that I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome.
Nice.
And you're traveling to Berlin to do a stream, you told us?
Yeah, tomorrow is on Hür in Berlin. Yeah.
Nice one. Cool. Great stuff, man. I mean, I would definitely encourage people to check out the album on the Arts. It's an incredible journey. It's a really amazing achievement, I think. Have a look there. Sunil, anything you want to share with us?
I mean, a lot of the stuff I'm doing now is mostly political stuff. Actually, it's trying to kind of change our laws and change the system for nightlife, and hopefully change the culture in the long term. So that's sort of where my head's at mostly, but that will be starting to change soon, hopefully. And it does sort of start to tie into things like reopening as well, because we've had to kind of be a voice for the nightlife sector to try and reopen so at the moment, I mean, there are various talks underway around like an opening pilot event, because we're a little bit behind some other countries as well. So that's still work in progress. I mean, it was only yesterday that our government announced that they were actually going to embrace antigen testing, like this is a big thing for us to actually go, yeah, we see the merits in that when every other country already has. So it's a little bit slower here in terms of gigging and stuff like that. I mean, it's mostly looking like kind of starting back around August, and then it's kind of opening up a little bit more in the months after that. But I'm still a little, let's see how the gigs go. I mean, I'm not banking on anything, that it all going back to, scheduled say one thing, but whether it all goes that way, let's just keep our fingers crossed. But there's in terms of releases and stuff like that, there's a couple of records I'm kind of working on and that are kind of almost there. But then tracks wise, there's something on Don't Be Afraid coming out soon. That's just one tune. Couple of other bits and pieces. Maybe I've forgotten something, but yeah, we'll see. There's some stuff in the works, but I just need to finalize some bits and pieces now. Yeah, so that's it.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Andrew?
For myself, I've got quite a few releases coming up for this year. I've got like a nice 8-track EP coming out with Bank Records again from New York. I'm going to be doing my first EP with Cyberspeak, which is like a cool Italian label, do like sort of more like left field sort of electronic and stuff like that. And I've also done like I'll be doing like a cassette tape release with Murder Channel, which is like
nice.
Japanese breakcore and noise label. It's going to be like half an hour of improvised noise music on one side and another half an hour of improvised more like dance floor stuff on the other side. And apart from that, there's more stuff that I can't really say just now.
Okay, well, it all sounds good. Yeah, so people check out all these guests' pages and things. Sander is frantically posting.
Yeah, don't check out my Bandcamp because that's not actually my Bandcamp. It is.
Did you get hijacked?
No. I'll explain it. It is my Bandcamp, but it was set up specifically for a release that came out on B-Pitch, and I've never used this. Like it's. Do you know the way when you're doing a release for a certain label, they'll say, oh, maybe set up a band. So that's what that is. I don't put up anything through that. I don't control that. In time, I will. But no, thanks for putting it up there, man. But no, it's there may be stuff that will come on that, but it's not really. It is my Bandcamp, but at the moment, it's not really my Bandcamp. But
okay, I think
if you know what I mean. Yeah,
I think it's a really good note to end on. People, don't go to Sunil's Bandcamp. Don't do it.
At some point there might be one, but it's not an active one as such. But yeah.
Okay, so yeah, thanks guys for hanging out. It was really great to talk to you all. I think I should end by mentioning our Discord server. That's where all the nerds hang out. It's like a real-time forum kind of thing where people are discussing producing music, basically. So it's a really nice place to be. And the other one is the Patreon page that we have where you can support us or you can get sound packs, masterclasses and stuff like that. So have a look there. Sander should be posting the links now, I guess. And that is it for me. So thanks a lot, guys. I really enjoyed it. And thanks for the people who... Absolutely, and thanks for people who stuck with us till the end on Twitch and everything. So yeah, that's it for me. That's it for us. Ciao, ciao.
Nice one.
Bye, bye.
Cheers.